Hey, so I do remember how to do this. I know it's been a while. Like, it's not even been what I would call a hot minute. It's been way more than a hot minute. Things got incredibly crazy with the personal situation. I didn't really go into detail with in a couple episodes ago, but let's just say it really kind of fell off the rails right around Independence Day. So, because this was personal stress, we talked about this before, personal stress hits you much harder than professional stress. So, this whole situation, which was personal stress, really went off the rails around Independence Day. And it's just been an absolute whirlwind of emotions and stress, family discussions, just incredible. So, I know I said I was going to commit to this podcast, and I really was. But I could not foresee everything going south as quickly with that personal family situation as it did. So I hope you all understand. At some point when I feel comfortable divulging what's going on and what has been going on, which I feel I'll get to that point in a month or two, it'll all make more sense as to why this has been sporadic and why I talk about this family situation and what I mean by it. It's going to make a lot more sense because I feel like sometime in October, I'll feel in a better place to actually divulge to you a little bit more what was going on, just so you realize that I absolutely was not necessarily flaking on the podcast for any other reason other than a really horrible personal family situation going on. But enough about that. I want to start diving back into this podcast and getting it going again on a semi-consistent basis. And by semi-consistent basis, meaning I'm really shooting for episodes every other week at this point. I feel like it's possible that family thing is starting to simmer down a little bit. Again, this is all abstract, so it's not going to make a lot of sense, but we're bringing in other people to help, and that's going to help lessen my burden in the situation. So I feel like I can now commit to doing the podcast at least every other week. And there's the possibility that there might even be more episodes than that. But welcome back to Landlord Chick Podcast. I'm so glad to be back here. Let's go ahead and dive into this episode.
Building a real estate portfolio is as much about buying properties as being a de facto entrepreneur. I'm Karina Ufinger. I'm a multi-property investor, rental management company CEO, and also a landlord coach. I'm going to show you the systems and knowledge you need to thrive as a real estate entrepreneur. From your first property purchase to building a portfolio of passive income where you work less than 5 hours a week, you'll learn the essential information and skills to build a profitable portfolio and live the life you truly want. Whether you are well on your journey or just starting out, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Landlord Chick Podcast.
So I have to confess that this episode is not going to necessarily follow a theme. When I went onto Trello, where I keep a lot of my life organized, and I looked at the podcast list, there wasn't really a theme that struck me as like, yes, I'm totally inspired by this one right now. So this is going to be kind of like a general chatty real estate discussion about things that I've done in the past 2 months that I feel are either kind of learning curves for other people or just a way for me to impart some of my knowledge on you and to keep you updated on what I have been doing in real estate and where I'm kind of going with it. Now, the first question everyone's going to have, because you've asked me this on Instagram, you've asked me this in Bigger Pockets, have I bought anything yet? No. So I had those deals that fell apart in April and May, and I was searching again in June. But then, like I said in the introduction here, really everything kind of fell off the rails with the personal situation around Independence Day, which meant that July and August, I honestly did not look at anything for buying for me personally on a really hardcore basis. Like I was window shopping, I did a couple showings, and I always went there thinking, okay, if something really strikes me as a deal that I can't pass up, we'll go ahead and start making the moves. But I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm going to try and do different numbers to make it work, or I'm going to get into this long negotiation thing. I just didn't want that much on my plate. So, no, I have not bought anything. I have, however, in the past 30 days, delved really deep into flipping research. So, research on flipping. This is something I talked about earlier that it was on my radar for this year. I decided it was time to kind of start looking at that and transitioning into that. So I started to do some research, and I got to say I'm very surprised at how much knowledge I did not have on flipping. Like I have a lot of real estate knowledge on obviously buy and hold. That's what this whole podcast is mostly about. I have a lot of information on like general financing and repair and maintenance, but I don't have a lot of knowledge in those areas about flipping. And so it's been kind of a learning curve where I'm like, wow, okay. Like, yes, I know a lot of stuff about buy and hold. I know a lot. But yet that doesn't necessarily mean I know a lot about flipping. And I'm realizing that there are definitely some places that I had knowledge gaps that needed to be filled. So I've been taking in a lot of different YouTube videos on flipping and rehabs. In particular, one of the YouTubes that I've been watching is Meet Kevin. It's his earlier content. Lately, he's gotten more into stocks and just sort of like, I think, general business content. But early on, the first couple of years of his channel, basically everything before the pandemic was very real estate focused, and there was a lot of flipping content on there. He would walk you through flipping a property, take you through before and afters. So I've been absorbing a lot of content from Meet Kevin on YouTube in regards to flipping. I haven't actually read any flipping books yet. I don't know if I'm really going to read any books on flipping. I think I'm just going to go more with the idea of YouTube and podcast. So I've been absorbing a lot of information there. I've been watching the market as far as potential flips, learning where I'd be comfortable doing a flip, because oddly enough, where I'm comfortable doing a flip is not necessarily exactly the same places I'm comfortable buying. So I'm opening up my horizons a little bit with flipping in the sense of I'm entertaining markets that I wouldn't necessarily buy in. Now, the markets I wouldn't necessarily buy in get more down to the red tape that exists for buy and hold properties, long-term rentals in those counties or those cities. So obviously, if I'm flipping, that doesn't apply. So I'm opening up my horizons in this aspect. So I have more markets that I'm looking at for flipping than I do for buy and hold. So I've been getting familiar with those markets, the ins and outs of what are the good areas versus the bad areas. Also getting an idea of what the prices kind of look like in those areas, because again, I haven't been looking for buy and holds there. I haven't been looking at real estate in general there, so I need to get more familiar with what prices look like in those markets. So I've been really delving into that. I have not actually executed a flip yet. I still feel like I'm in a little bit of the research phase. 30 days definitely probably doesn't seem like a lot to a lot of people, but for me especially when it's 30 days, but I still am a realtor closing transactions for clients. I'm still a property manager, and I still own my own rentals that I'm actively involved in managing. So it's like, okay, when I say 30 days, it's still not exactly a heck of a lot of time, but I am still committed to doing a flip this year. I am 100% committed to doing a flip this year. My goal is to have my first flip bought by the middle of October. Now that might be a little quick, but I need a quick goal like that to just keep me focused, to keep me driven. Because if you put it too far out, it's gonna be like, oh, I got a month, I got 2 months, I got 3 months. And I don't want that to happen with this. So I'm telling myself middle of October, I want to close on my first flip. Now, some people will be like, well, that's not a very good time to close on a flip, because by the time you get it done, it's going to be December or January. I'm going to be strategic in buying this flip, which means it's either going to be one that's going to hit the market, honestly, probably middle of November, or it's going to be something that isn't going to hit the market until sometime in, let's say, February or March. So I'm going to be strategic in that. Then this leads to another conversation of where is the real estate market headed in the next couple months. Honestly, I feel like we're headed for a busier winter season again than we normally see. So when we talk about normal, going back to pre 2020 levels, we're still going to have a busier winter than I think we've had before 2020. So I don't think it's going to be a complete and utter slowdown. I think also what we're going to see in this market is prices are going to start to normalize a little bit. They're going to start to probably go down a little bit again. This isn't necessarily going to be related to anything other than where we know interest rates are going to go continually, which is generally up. Yes, they went down recently and they were up a little bit before then and so on and so forth. But generally the trajectory of interest rates is they're going back up, which means that at some point, we talked about this in a previous episode, I think before I fell off the earth, at some point what has to happen is this has to be accounted for in the purchase prices of homes. So because we're still in this very active market and prices are going to start to go down a little bit, we're going to see a little bit of a balancing out where we're going to have people wanting to buy again very strongly. And it's actually going to make a little bit more fiscal sense to be buying because of the way things are going to be adjusted out. So there's going to be an active winter for us, I truly believe, whether it be in single family homes or in investment purchases. I think we're headed for a busy winter. Now, that being said, I am in the early stages of this. When I'm getting into flipping here, what I'm doing is I'm reevaluating my contractor circle. So who do I feel are going to be the people that I bring in to get this done, get it done professionally and quickly, and making sure that these are people that I can distinctly rely upon through the entire process. I don't want to be bringing contractors in that I have to keep tabs on a little bit more. I don't want to be bringing in contractors that have scheduling issues that maybe are slight inconveniences when I'm using them for rentals, but they're more major inconveniences when they start messing around with other contractors' scheduling, and then it puts off being able to put the place on the market. So that's why I'm looking at my contractors and reevaluating them, deciding them, okay, this person is good to have in my back pocket for flipping. This person doesn't really fit into the equation for that. So I've been doing some of that. I've obviously been doing some networking because flipping, really effective flipping, is done with private money. So I've been doing some networking, trying to find some additional private money resources that I have. I do have 2 at my disposal, but I'd honestly like to have more than that. So I'm looking at growing my portfolio for private money lending. And this is actual relationship-based lending, by the way. Like, I've had lenders reach out to me after listening to this podcast and be like, hey, I do private money loans. And they end up doing them rather professionally. So I'm actually networking more to find low-key, casual, private money connections. Because those are what I'm realizing is a huge part of your success. Don't get me wrong, hard money lenders are great. I think if you don't have the ability to make these private money connections on your own, hard money lenders are great. They're just not going to be my first choice for accomplishing a flip. So I am going to stick with trying to use private money as much as I can for these flips that I'm going to do. Beyond that, beyond looking at private money and getting my circle growing and getting my contractors and reevaluating them, the next thing I'm doing is, I'm just getting familiar with the market. I'm browsing the MLS every other day, just kind of looking at things and looking at properties and going like, okay, if I were buying this one, I would change out that, I would change that. And just getting an idea of how to actually look at these properties and what I would do with them. What are some of the suggestions I've learned on how to open up spaces, or what are some of the suggestions I've learned about making a bathroom appear more functional when it's small, or what are the tips I've learned on finishing off basements. And I'm really looking at properties and using all that knowledge I've acquired and actively putting it into sort of real world exercises. What I like about this approach, and this was a suggestion that was put forward to me by one of my friends who did flipping before she moved to a different state. She said one of the things that she spent a couple weeks doing before she actually started committing to properties and going out there and visibly looking at them was just scanning the MLS. And based on the pictures, creating a scope of work as sort of a trial situation and getting an idea of how I might change a property given the knowledge that I know. So would I knock down this wall? Would I add a breakfast bar here? Would I go ahead and add the garage on this property because there's not one right now? How much value is that going to add? She went through a lot of trial exercises through the MLS by looking at properties. So I'm going to do that for a little bit, just sort of as a trial by error, sort of like a real world exercise situation, just to get acclimated to the idea of creating scope of works based on real properties, looking at properties and helping myself visualize the changes I'd want to make. These are all areas that I know I need a little bit of help with, especially the visualization part, because I'm not a very visual person. Like, I cannot easily draw a picture from scratch in my head. If I'm going to draw a picture of something, I need to have seen something similar to it so that I can use that as a basis. I'm just not that creative with visualization. So I know for me, I really need to work on that when I'm looking at these properties, is honestly getting a little bit more of an imagination going when I imagine what my changes are going to look like in the finished product. Then the last thing in regards to flipping, what I'm doing is I'm also getting more into the calculations of it. So we talked about scope of work. That kind of feeds into the calculations discussion, but obviously calculations on a flip are much different than calculations for a buy and hold. So I'm getting more into learning how to calculate the flips calculations, not only in regards to like your budget, but then obviously you get into this idea of creating your ARV, so your after rehab value, then calculating beyond your ARV what you might actually list it for given what the market's at. So I'm getting a lot into those sorts of situations and figuring out the calculations. These are similar calculations, but they're still different enough where I definitely need to put some time into familiarizing myself with them and learning how to create an actual ARV, learning how to create a budget that accounts for the way you pay interest and the way you pay out a private money loan on a flip being a balloon payment. This is all stuff that I kind of need to get readapted to in regards to doing flips. Now, over on the currently owned property side of it, what's been going on? Well, my personal portfolio has been pretty stable. I've made some significant capital expenditures to some of the properties this summer, which has been great. We did one of the roofs, so we actually have, out of what I say is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So out of 7 roofs, we basically have 3 of them fully replaced. 7 roofs may sound confusing because you're like, wait a minute, I thought you only had 4 buildings. I do, but some of them have like multiple roofs, like they have like an addition here, an addition there onto these homes. So that's why I say I have 7 roofs. So we have 3 of the roofs done fully, which is great. It's great to have that. We obviously still have 2 really old roofs to get through yet, and we still have another bit of a half roof to do on an addition. But honestly, I'm really happy with the fact that we're able to get some of these roofs done, because that's a big peace of mind for me. Like, one of my sort of closet fears, I guess you would say, is beyond not having furnaces that don't work in the winter, it's being presented with like having roof leaks in the winter, because there's very, very little you can do with roof leaks in the winter or even early spring. So I always get really nervous around that time of year, like, oh my gosh, if something happens, like, what am I going to do? So it's nice that now I have 3 roofs that I don't have to worry about having those leaks. Like, that's really, really good for me. The other thing we did was we actually started to pave some of our gravel driveways. So at our properties, we have 2 properties, which We have ownership of all the driveways, and they are gravel driveways. We haven't really put much thought into necessarily finishing the driveways up until when we were preparing our project list for this summer, last winter. And honestly, I have to say that while I knew paving them, putting in asphalt, was going to make a pretty big difference in regards to what it meant for tenants, just like I felt like a gravel driveway kind of gives a certain impression. I'm realizing now that the finished product of an asphalt driveway on a property, even if the rest of the property isn't necessarily up to snuff, just having that paved driveway really brings up the entire image of the property. If you have properties which have gravel driveways, let me tell you a little bit about some of the differences that you'll find with asphalt that you might not have actually considered. So one thing is, when you have a gravel driveway, it's very easy for puddles to form. And the puddles that you form in gravel driveways, eventually, obviously, they kind of like eat away at the dirt, and then they make dirt potholes. So in one of my properties, I have a lot of potholes on one side that are created from rain puddles just standing there. And it's also created by snow. Snow doesn't melt as quickly as it does on asphalt when it's on gravel. So in that situation, you also end up with driveways that are ice skating rinks in the winter, like just consistently ice skating rinks. It doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter. So because you have the rain puddles that form, and then you have these ice chunks that basically stick around for so long on gravel driveways, it eats away more at the dirt, and it creates more of this like dip and uphill situation where you've got a lot of like deformities in your gravel driveway, in your dirt driveway. So it's really kind of annoying from the tenant perspective because the driveway is not smooth. There's usually a lot more rain that kind of sits on a driveway, which is gravel or dirt. And again, the ice then in the winter, obviously, is just almost a sheer sheet of ice. With asphalt, what's going to happen is the ice or the snow is going to melt faster. Your asphalt's going to stay a little bit warmer, which means that you're not going to have as much of an issue with your driveway being just one sheer ice skating rink, which is how at least one of my driveways was always consistently just this ice skating rink in the winter. After the first snowfall, you always were taking your life in your own hands, and you still kind of are, because we haven't done that one yet. But with the asphalt driveways that we have done, we have seen just this distinct difference of how the property looks, how the rainwater is handled differently now. It's not puddling up as much, which is fantastic. These are, and in regards to it not puddling up, that gets taken care of when you lay asphalt based on the asphalt company putting in angles as well to it all. So it actually makes it nice for the rainwater to run off, and it doesn't like puddle up anywhere necessarily. That's what makes it really great with some fresh asphalt. Obviously, eventually as it settles more, you'll get some areas and you'll start to get puddling areas, but really, generally speaking, you're going to have a lot less puddles when you have an asphalt driveway versus when you have a gravel one. And I'm honestly really looking forward to the fact that at least one of the driveways is not going to be an ice skating rink this time around. And this particular one that we did that I'm thinking about mostly in my head, getting back to the puddles, this was a driveway which unfortunately the tenant had to park like a good 4 yards from their front door because of the fact that there would always be a consistently large puddle of water in spring and summer, almost always, because it was just how the rain pooled together in that area and how it fell right there. So now for this particular tenant, he's really excited because now he gets to park right up by his front door stoop rather than having to account for the rainfall, which could happen or is actively there, impeding him from parking really close to his front door stoop. So he's really excited about that. We paid pretty much exactly what I thought we were going to pay for doing this. Prices were pretty on par with what is the national average, which is really great. So it's nice to have something like that done. And I love that it's a visible improvement, that even though this is a driveway at a quad that only one tenant uses in the building, but just the optics that it gives to the tenants that, hey, wow, they put in an asphalt driveway over there. They're actively improving. Like, I love what that does in sending subtle messages to my tenants as well. That, okay, they're actively improving, which this is something we told them we were when we did the huge rent increases last year. Like, everyone got this letter explaining that we've done a lot of upgrades that maybe you haven't seen and some you have, but now we've got a lot more on the docket. And in order to do these, we've got to raise your rents, which haven't been raised competitively in over a decade, the entire time that we've owned them. So they know we were talking about making improvements, but it's really great to actually have it be distinctly visible. Like, it's not like, oh, we replaced your water heater or, oh, we replaced your furnace. Like, this is a tangible improvement that tenants are going to be able to see. And that's going to be a real sign to them that we're serious about improving these places. The other thing that we did was we replaced one furnace, so we have another one yet to go. So we knew we had to replace 2 furnaces over the summer because of the fact that we were told last winter when we repaired one of them that really it shouldn't really have been repaired. It really should be replaced at this point. So because that and its sister unit in this duplex are the same age, we knew we were going to have to replace these furnaces. So we did go ahead and replace one of those furnaces. We got the other one to do yet. But it's been really great to get these sort of capital expenditure improvements done because some of them are giving us peace of mind as the owners. So having the roofs done, having 2 of the furnaces replaced, newer, great peace of mind for us. Then, of course, there's the aesthetics of it and less of a headache for the tenants and having some of these asphalt driveways installed. So I'm really happy with what we've done with our current portfolio in regards to improvements. I think we made really smart choices this year. Even though I still have a porch, which is half painted. Like, I started painting a porch not last August of 2020. I still have not gotten back to finish the other half. Despite that being unfinished, I'm still really happy with all the other progress that we made at our properties on projects we wanted to do. Now, we also had to do projects that we didn't want to do. So we had to do some pretty big deck repair and porch rail maintenance at one of our properties because, long story short, the city started to have eyes on the property because a neighbor complained that our roofer was keeping a pickup truck parked on the grass. It'd been there since December because, remember, we had a really warm December. He had started the roof. His crew had started the roof. They left their truck parked there. They parked it there. Finally, somebody called the city, and we ended up on the city's radar. So because of that, we ended up with a honey-do list of not just the roof, which was in progress, but also a honey-do list with our porches and our deck rails there. So we did drop a significant amount of money on that. We basically redid all of the spindles and handrails and porch rails on the front porch of this property. And then we just ended up replacing some runners and replacing a handrail on a side porch. But, with the way lumber costs are nowadays, that wasn't necessarily inexpensive either, though. So that was really kind of unfortunate that we had to add that onto the budget because that was adding on another $2,000 to the budget this year. So not exactly where we wanted to drop $2,000, but at least it was done when we were fully occupied. We've had some good cash flow for a while. It's been really nice. From December until now, we've been fully occupied. We've had 1 or 2 tenants have a little bit of payment issues, but they're fully caught up now, and we haven't lost any money. So that's been really great. Unfortunately, our fully occupied streak is going to come to an end the end of this month because we did have a tenant give notice. They're relocating out of state for a job. But it's probably going to rent pretty quickly because this is the unit that I dropped a lot of money into last year, where we did all new LVP throughout. We did 2 bathroom remodels and we did brand new kitchen countertops. And I want to say a brand new kitchen faucet. So we put a lot of money into that place. It's really nice and new. I don't think this tenant's really going to have damaged it that much, if at all. So it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround for us. which will be nice just to get it back on the market. And I'll be interested to see how much, if at all, I can raise the rent. I was pretty surprised when I rented it out last year. If you guys don't remember, this was the place that when we last rented it out, we had a long existing tenant in there, one that we had inherited. And so the rent was down to like $475 when this person was there. It was a 1 bedroom, 1.5 bath. I know, really, really odd kind of setup, but I didn't convert it into a rental. I just have it now. So it was $475 when it was rented most previously to this person. This most recent person was paying $785. So there's definitely been a substantial rent increase. I'm curious how much more, if any, I can go up from that $785. I don't feel like there's going to be too much that I can really go up with that, but I'll let you guys know. I'm actually kind of doubting if $785 is true off the top of my head. I really should have verified that before I said it, but I do know we went up by at least $150 from what it was rented prior to when we rented it most recently. So I'm really curious to see what we're going to be able to rent this place for to a brand new tenant and see how that turns out. Other than that, it's really been kind of quiet on the portfolio front. Again, we haven't had a lot of people entering and exiting. We haven't had any mass urgent situations occur. Everything's been kind of just nicely flowing along there, which has been phenomenal. Over on the property management side, things have been booming. Been dealing with a couple situations. So we did have this was great. We had a tenant move out who wanted to pretend that they knew more about security deposit law than we did. And this is why I strongly encourage everyone to get extremely familiar with their state statutes. I may be a broken record with this, but because we knew our statutes very well, we could call horse hockey on the one tenant who moved out that was trying to school us in how security deposits were done in Wisconsin, which they did not know. And then we were also able to quickly divert a situation where there was a tenant who was basically trying to slyly withhold rent because they were wanting some repairs done. And it's like, well, no, actually in the state of Wisconsin, you can't do that. And these weren't like repairs we had held off on doing. Like she literally was like, hey, just so you know, I'll have the rest of the rent here for the maintenance guy to pick up when he shows up to do the repairs. Now, maybe we read into that in a different way than we should have, but immediately we went down the road of, no, you cannot withhold rent in Wisconsin for the purposes of uncompleted repairs. Sure, there's other things you can do, but you can't withhold it. It has to be sent somewhere else if you want to withhold it, and it has to be like a really big, large looming repair. So we were able to nip that situation in the butt because we know our state statutes so incredibly thoroughly. So that is why I really encourage all of you, whether you're in Wisconsin or not, to get intimately familiar with your state statutes and recognize how to Google efficiently so that you are reading your own state statutes, you're not reading other people's interpretations of them, and just getting familiar with the different code numbers, because it also makes it easier to Google your state statutes on rentals. So that's where I've been. Where am I going? I think I've said a little bit throughout this where I'm going. I am going to do a flip. I want to do a flip this year. I do still want to buy a rental property this year, but I know it's going to be easier to buy rental property once I've completed one flip because I'll have more cash in my pocket. So there's the possibility that that might take a second. It might be put on the back burner compared to flipping. I really think I'm going to do a flip first, then I'm going to do a residential purchase. And then I think really otherwise I'm just out there hammering the pavement for my realty clients, and I'm just learning more about flipping. Flipping is the next big horizon for me, maybe down the road, possibly short-term rentals. I feel like that might be towards the end of next year, maybe getting one that I would use myself for personal use and not just as an investment. So that is where my mind is going right now with real estate. That's some of the lessons I've learned, some of the things we've had to handle. What I'm going to do next week, I'm going to go ahead and post the long overdue second part of the lease deep dive. We'll get that taken care of. We'll get that out of the way. And then we'll start with some brand new episodes, brand new content the following week after that. So this is going to seem like it's one every week for the first 2 weeks here, but that's more because I have one pre-recorded. And then we're going to get more into the newly recorded episodes and new topics. It's great to be back. I look forward to chatting with you guys in technically what's going to be 2 weeks, because next week will be a pre-recorded one. But really glad to be back at this with you guys. I love having this podcast with you. I love conversing with you guys on Instagram and on Bigger Pockets. Hit me up over on Instagram, Landlord Chick, Bigger Pockets. You can find me, Karina Ufinger. I love engaging with you guys over there. I love hearing your questions, your suggestions. And one of the first episodes we're going to do is going to be another Q&A. Those are always so incredibly popular. So I want to do another Q&A, and then we'll dive into some more themed episodes after that. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you next time.